About 5 months ago, I developed a new playing related injury in the upper lip area, kind of uncontrollable quiver or tremble motion. We're going to talk about this today. Where did it come from? What are possible solutions? I hope this can be of help to you. So about 5 months ago, I developed a strange issue in my upper lip area, a kind of quiver or tremble, which came completely uncontrollably. I did a Google and YouTube search, and at that point there was nobody talking about this on the internet. There were websites addressing this broadly, but nobody with specific videos and solutions. So I thought I'd address this for the community. So about November, December last year, in winter time, I began to notice this quiver in the upper lip. I've never had this specifically before. The last time I ever had problems with my chops was in my study period when I was working towards an ITA competition, and I simply overdid it. I got some kind of strain injury, which eventually did go. But this played out differently now. This kind of quiver would come throughout the day, and basically the more I played, the more it would come. So I'd argue that the winter time probably provoked this injury more than other times of year, playing a few gigs outside in the cold with breaks in between, no warm-ups, playing very loud Christmas stuff outside. A bad situation for this issue. However, it did stick around for a long time, and eventually I started Googling it, as I said, checking out online who had this kind of problem. It's nothing new. People have had this kind of problem, but I didn't find any specific solutions in this case. Luckily enough, I had recently joined a new Facebook group with the name Brass Injury Support Community, and eventually I reached out there with the hope that somebody could help, and indeed they could. So if you're getting value from this, if this has maybe helped you already to some extent, at least to know where to turn to, please hit subscribe, support a trombone player. I'm fascinated by injuries, brass-related injuries, and want to bring this more to light, especially on this channel. In the link, there's a playlist down below in the description about a playlist for other brass-related injuries that I've been through, other tips. I hope that helps. Please hit subscribe to support the channel. An Australian horn player by the name of Frankie Losurdo on Facebook was recommended to me, and he offered me a very quick video appointment to discuss and to look at this issue. First, he made a basic diagnosis. He asked me to play quite close to the camera, basic slurs and scales, and then made a different diagnosis, I believe, with a toothpick to diagnose the state of the injury. He didn't think there was any particular damage to my embouchure. His immediate take was he noticed I had a somewhat looser setup and that it was simply lacking a kind of structural strength. So he showed me one exercise which did end up actually helping me get through this problem. What was the exercise? I'm only going to show it very briefly. I would highly recommend getting in touch with an expert like him if you have this kind of problem. But basically it was a kind of peak motion, he called it, a puckering motion of the lips, or like a kiss, you could say, with a toothpick in the middle. This was just for the focus of the lips, and basically holding this position until, and I quote from him, until you feel lactic acid build up. This was a bit of a strange concept for me. In the end, that meant the same as until you feel fatigue. For some, this could be in seconds. For some, this could be in several minutes. He said, do this twice a day, leave roughly an hour between playing, or between the exercise and playing, and it normally sorts itself out in a week. It did get better, but it definitely didn't go within a week. In fact, because it got better, I started playing again more, and that actually flared up the problem again, as it were. So it got worse. It was still this balancing act, or this relationship of more playing, more tremor in the lips. How often am I talking about this tremor? Several times a day. Between, in the worst case, I'd say a couple of times every hour, perhaps. So I got in touch again with Frankie, and he simply said, trust the process, keep doing this. So I did, and again, it was nearly gone, but unfortunately, this thing, it flared up several times again. It never quite left me alone. So according to Frankie, this exercise was supposed to strengthen a main set of muscles around the lips called the orbiculus oris. When it didn't quite go away, I just happened to interview an old teacher of mine, and Doug Burden in Canada, and I asked him what he thought of the issue. He suggested some more mouthpiece buzzing, which would incorporate all muscles in the face. So I did that too, and again, I also did get the impression this was helping. So I'd buzz on the way to work in the car, and it did have positive impacts. It never quite went away, as I said. It was still kind of niggling away in the background until finally now I was away for a week on holiday. I had a 2-week Easter break, and the first time there up in a beautiful part of Cyprus, I realized, hey, this hasn't happened for a few days now. So I would argue there's a huge psychological component to, obviously, if you're a professional, your livelihood depends on these face muscles working. So there's going to be a certain amount of latent fear working with this thing. I remember speaking to Frankie, and even just bringing the trombone to my lips, it started to quiver, and he said, oh yeah, the brain is just crazy in this regard. It's playing devil with you, as it were, already predicting a potential problem or danger area. So I wouldn't say to everybody, immediate rest is the way through, because I'm not sure that would have helped me within my normal kind of semester period of working and teaching. It needed a complete break and holiday vacation, psychological break from the work routine to finally combined with buzzing and this exercise to get me through this. What kind of player have I become? What kind of player am I in terms of warm-up, etc.? Just to give some background, I don't need a huge warm-up. I'm normally the kind of guy who can immediately get into playing. Some short buzzing, mid to low notes. I don't feel I need to do a huge routine to get to my kind of peak level of playing. This didn't used to be the case. Since I switched to jazz music in my studies, I got better and quicker at this, I think because the intuitive aspect of playing was increased. So to cut a longer story short, over the last sort of 10 years of being a professional teacher and player, my warm-up routine from studying basically has always got shorter, which in a sense I'm proud of. So what happened now? What has changed to bring this injury? I really can't say. My teacher, Doug Burden's, mentioned atrophy of the muscles. Now I'm 37, so that sounds kind of shocking to hear. When I mentioned it to Frankie, he didn't think any atrophy could be an issue. It could simply be that, over the years I did buzzing less. I neglected a lot of these basic exercises simply because I didn't think I needed them anymore for my day job of playing. So now I've come back into some of these routines and in a sense welcomed them anew. I think a lot of musicians could attest to this, that I remember the quote from Joe Alessi, there's no period in your life where you don't need to practice. I absolutely agree with that. I think the important thing is to realize what you need to practice and how your body and mind is changing with time. I'd also like to observe there was a point when I felt like, again, things weren't getting better necessarily. I probably began doing this peak pucker motion too hard. This could be a typical thing with my kind of temperament to overdo things. When I relaxed a bit more with the exercise and perhaps stopped it a bit sooner, I did get the impression that, again, the symptoms got less Of course, this is all hugely subjective, and it's always going to be with such a sensitive issue, so connected to your own emotional state of being. But I find this an important issue as well. How hard do we hold these kind of tensions in the chops? What other tips can I give you along the way? Well, you've definitely heard it before, I'm sure, about this, is take the warm-up seriously. I'm a bad example for this. I think most people would just do the absolute minimum, and that's fine if it's efficient. I've developed a number of play-along tracks for buzzing along to melodies going through the mid to low range, especially, also into the high range. I specifically would recommend, though, stick to the mid to low range, specifically in the first minutes of buzzing, to really expand the chops, stretch the muscles, and get blood circulation happening. Sure, go a little into your higher register, but don't dwell there too long. It's simply too taxing, especially if you're having issues. If you want specifics, you might be interested in my trombone course, Bone Basics, Intuitive Foundations, at the trombone, also linked below. Closing remarks would be, if you're having this kind of issue or other chop embouchure related issues and you have no one to turn to, or you've tried several things that just aren't working, I can highly recommend Frankie on Facebook. His company, he's actually the CEO of a company called Brass Rehab, situated in Australia, and he told me he's also working with a professional doctor who can help if there's more serious examination needed. So thanks a lot, Frankie, for your help. I hope I don't need you anytime soon, but I know where to turn to. Brass Injury Support Community on Facebook. There's places to turn to. There is a community there willing to talk about these issues. Please use them. Don't suffer in silence. And please use the comments and let us know what you've had perhaps in this regard, what you've overcome, how you overcame it. This is essential information for the brass community. I feel like it's still in a very infant stage of research and development, as it were. We need more answers. We need more communication about this. I still have the impression a lot of players don't want to talk about their own problems for obvious reasons. But let's be honest, there's not many players who don't experience some kind of issues throughout their playing career. So let's help each other, and see you in the next video. No time to warm up. The cold weather specifically, probably the worst kind of opening. So the point of this exercise, according to Frankie, was to strengthen the orbiculus oris. Orbiculus oris.